So welcome everybody to now our final panel in this series for today. And this panel is all about developing the market. So we are now looking at how we can further develop the market for EO services and products. We're looking at best practices, we're looking at common challenges, and we'd like to examine a future in which there is a thriving EO ecosystem that we have built. And I think this panel coming at the end of today is quite pertinent, since it picks up on a lot of the points that have already been made earlier on in the discussions around R&D trends and around policy enablers and around capacity building, and also to some extent about awareness raising. So with me on the stage, I'd like to introduce to you Eduard Zorita, Space Downstream Market Officer from EUSPA. Hi, Eduard. And Stella Tkatchova, European Council Innovation Council Program Manager for Space. Thank you, Stella, for being with us today. And online, at home but online, we have Gordon Campbell, who is head of the enterprise section in EO Data Applications Division, EO Science Applications and Climate Department, European Space Agency. Hello, Gordon.
Hi, good afternoon. Hi, good afternoon. You can hear me?
Yes, we can. And you can hear us all right?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks.
All right. So, I mean, we've seen a lot of change in the EO market from being a traditionally anchor tenant, government-dominated story. I think this is a well-known tale. We all know the impact of new space, which has started to be really quite heavily felt. I mean, planet's meteoric rise in just a matter of, I think, 7 or 8 years has shown us what is possible when venture capitalists put their heart and soul into the Earth observation industry, where it's really build and launch. And of course, we know that we see a bright future ahead for the EO services market, and I think this is part of the paradox. In the latest market report from EUSPA on the EO and GNSS market, there is a forecast of the doubling of revenues from 2.8 billion to 5.5 billion over the next decade. Okay, so 10-year cycle to double the revenues. And for the EO value-added services market, which makes up the bulk of this revenue, there is an expectation that we would see just short of 5 billion total revenues by 2031. So this is interesting. We've got new space. We've got now new space elements being embedded into the Copernicus program. So Planet and ISI more recently, now part of Copernicus. So this is all very, very interesting and gives us pause for thought today. What are the steps that are still needed to develop this market further? And I'm going to turn to Eduard and ask, because one of EUSPA's stated objectives is indeed market development. So what is EUSPA doing to help grow the EO sector? And what is EUSPA bringing from its experience in developing the market for Galileo as the GSA into Copernicus as its recently adopted mandate of about a year ago?
Thank you, Dimitrios. It's interesting because you invited me to speak about market development for the observation, but now let's say we're more in listening mode. We are really. I have listened so much today, and I had prepared some points, and I think most of them have been covered. As you said, I mean, we really covered through the whole day a lot of the elements that need to be put in place for an effective market uptake. And even if we, as you know, as you were saying, we are coming from say the GNSS world and the experience that we had there, and we were entrusted to take also responsibility of the market uptake of Copernicus, but not because we are observation experts, but because we are good at market development. So hopefully we can help on that, and we just started, and that's why I'm saying that we're mostly in listening mode, but trying to be very active and trying to really see what has been done, because it's not that we are here that we arrive and then we say what needs to be done. Obviously, a lot of work has been done, but what we believe is that there is this last mile step that still needs to be considered, no, right? To put Earth observation into more market, into solutions and products that are fit for purpose. I took some notes along the day. I mean, I can cover some of them, but what needs to be clear is that Copernicus has been, let's say, exploited a lot and used a lot for policy. But maybe in terms of creating commercially viable solutions, let's say more in the benefit of the industry to the citizens, there has been not so much structured effort. A lot of efforts have been put there, and this is our what we want to do at EUSPA. It's trying to support the market in the growing in terms of commercial solutions, and I think it's at the right moment, because till now we have seen a lot of research done in Earth observation. There are lots of capabilities, lots of data, technology-wise, and we have seen a lot of use cases. Let's say trying to see that what Earth observation can do, and that has been amazing. The work that FIRE has been doing, that EARSC has been doing so far. But as I was saying, now it's the time to see how do we convert these use cases into viable products. And for that, we think that it has been said today a lot. We have to really talk the language of the user. We cannot go with technologies and do a technology push to the user. We have to really understand what are their needs, and their needs might be something that is not really Earth observation language. It has nothing to do with Earth observation, but then we can find some Earth observation products that can fulfill those needs. And this is where we want to help. The way that we have been working till last year for GNSS, it's basically based on our motto is linking space to user needs, linking space to the user. And this is what we want to do as well. It's really trying to engage the user, understanding the user from their application, from their perspective, trying to understand what they really need, what they want to solve, the challenges they want to solve. And then is when you take a look at that, and you go back and take a step behind and say, can I solve these problems with Earth observation, with some other technologies? And we want to try to structure this and help the community to talk to each other and to understand this. And for that, it's very important to put the user into these conversations as well, because it's what we're talking about, raising awareness. They need to be a little bit aware of what Earth observation is doing, but as well, the Earth observation community needs to be aware, really needs to have a knowledge on the market. Cannot put a product in the market without really knowing what in depth what the market needs. So this is what that we want to try to help. And as I said, now we're trying to listen to everybody, all the work that has been done. The work that I heard today with FIRE is amazing, because it's partly the type of work that we want to do as well, in terms of listening to the user, and the outcomes that I heard. It's part of the outcomes that we're also expecting from our side. So all in all, I think there is a lot of work that has been done, amazing work, but now it's the last part. It's trying to put that into a product, and for that we need to consider a lot of options, that a lot of things that are not maybe Earth observation related, but are more market related.
Well, thank you very much, Edward, for that expansive discussion on what EUSPA is, how EUSPA is tackling this problem. And of course, there is a wealth of experience coming from many years operating as the GSA and developing the market for the Galileo program, in which this UCP user platform is a very important mechanism to actually get the voice of the user and then decide how industry should be shaped or supported to addressing those user requirements. So I think that's a very important role that EUSPA is playing. Okay, so I'm going to pause here for a second, because we need to open up our Slido questions so that you have time to think about it. And having heard what Eduardo just said, the question to you is, in 4 words or less, how should the EO market be further developed? Now, you can ignore the 4 words or less. That's It's just to force you to kind of think in a different kind of way. But you can ignore that, and you can, yes, you may respond to that as a poll. Okay, so that's different to the Q&A, but I can see that we already have a few cues coming into our Q&A, which is excellent news. Keep them coming. We will address them in the next half hour or so. So now I'd like to ask Stella to talk to us about what she's doing. So Stella, you're in charge of managing projects related to space systems and technologies at the European Innovation Council. And well, could you tell us how the EIC supports the pipeline of projects from breakthrough research all the way through to demonstration?
Well, the EIC objective is actually to identify, develop, and deploy high-risk innovations with a focus on breakthrough market innovations. So basically, the idea is to scale up these innovations, starting from low TRL, so starting with the Pathfinder from TRL 1 to TRL 4, then growing it to transition from TRL 4 to TRL 6, and then having the accelerator program, the EIC accelerator, which is from TRL 6 to TRL 9. So actually, the program which most pushes the market is then in the EIC accelerator, but we support innovators through the whole phase, the whole pipeline of innovation. And in the accelerator program, the good thing is that it's a very simple program. So you have a two-stage evaluation. The innovator just puts a 5-page proposal. 1 month later, he gets feedback on his proposal. But there, it's very important to have a strong business case. So for me, the most important question, which here in our community we have to address, is how do we encourage the development of customer-driven, interoperable, scalable, and affordable Earth observation space products and services? Because we've been talking about the Earth observation market for many years and pushing it, but I think it's maturing and it's worth time that we actually let it more to the commercial stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I think that's absolutely enlightening to hear what the EIC is doing across the entire stage of, I mean, concept to implementation. Of course, I'm sure you can share further information about that for people to follow offline. And indeed, it is a moment in which we are seeing a maturation, not only a maturation within the market itself for Earth observation, but we've got all these disruptors, we've got the new space disruptors, and then there's these more becoming de facto. Any conference you go to, you have to talk about cloud computing, you have to talk about machine learning, you have to talk about all of the convergence of technologies which make it certain services really within the reach now of the everyday.
Actually, we see this with our EIC space projects. We see, because we work mainly with SMEs and startups, we see the new space ecosystem, and actually Earth observation projects are most of our downstream projects and innovations. But we see these dynamics of actually game-changing innovations from an idea through commercialization and demonstration with commercial customers. And it's impressive the amount of activities happening and the different types of markets which are being created and emerging.
Apart from the sectors that we've already spoken about within FIRE, is there any market that you'd like to indicate that you've seen on the rise that we should be aware of?
Well, I think you've covered pretty much most of the domains, but I find very interesting the ones which are linked exactly to disaster management and using artificial intelligence, machine learning algorithms to analyze Earth observation, or merging different types of data. I think this is the future pretty much.
Thank you, Stella. Well, we heard from Eduardo about what EUSPA is doing, and I'm now going to turn to Gordon for the view from the European Space Agency. And Gordon, ESA has been supporting the EO downstream sector for many, many years through a very wide range of interventions and programs and incentives and funding schemes. So I'd like to ask for your comment on this. What efforts have you found to be most impactful?
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for the invitation to talk to you. It's been it's not a sort of one size fits all. I mean, I think when we started about 20 years ago, we were in one situation where things like data access was not as reliable as it could be. There was a number of technical risks. So we were mainly focusing on getting services up, running, and being sufficiently reliably available with known performance, etc., so that users and customers, etc., knew what they were getting. That sort of turned into the GMES service element and became Copernicus services, and that was the sort of easy case, if you like. It was we were looking at institutional markets where people understood spatial information, and we were sort of feeding into people that more or less spoke the same language. We're now on 5th generation sensors, so we don't. There's not really that level of fundamental technical difficulty at large scale anymore. Although we do maintain programs like Incubed and business applications that will, they can provide some level of support to startups and whoever who's got new commercial ideas to take these things to market. That's still possible. What we're doing in our part is looking at the more technical problems that industry or companies can't really solve by themselves, and how do we put money into these. So, for example, addressing structural problems in some of the target markets where we would like to see increased Earth observation. So, I mean, the example I always give is if it doesn't matter how cost effective or whatever Earth observation derived information is, if it's not part of an engineering accepted best practice, no civil engineering company is going to go out on a limb and use information from this source. It opens up all sorts of liabilities, etc. And there's similar situations in a number of different market sectors. So working with industry representative bodies to understand how we can define what is accepted best practice for the use of EO-derived information in particular situations is one preparation for having Earth observation accepted as a standard best practice. That it's just like everything else in that particular market sector. I mean, it's not sexy, but it's a slog that we need to do, and it's not something that an individual company can do by itself. It does need some sort of institutional role there. It's not something that would make commercial sense. So that's one thing that we've been looking at, and EARSC has been helping us with that as well, providing the sort of EO representation to complement the different market sectors, so things like gas pipeline, oil and gas, etc. These representative bodies. The other some of the other directions we're looking at is so you were mentioning some of the new enabling technologies that are coming along that are underestimated game changers. I think that we really should be, and we're really pushing platform-based solutions as a way forward in terms of lowering the sort of fixed costs that companies would see in terms of setting up new services, and also taking away again some of the barriers, getting out of the idea. I mean, a lot of Earth observation-based services are still in a sort of 1990s architecture where we order some data, we download it, we do some analysis, and we give the analysis to somebody and they pay us some money. And I mean, unless we get out of that model, we have more flexible ways of accessing data, so things like renting data for CPU processing time, etc. Still, so that the methodology is traceable, but you don't need the license for forever and ever for the data. So these types of things on the supply side, and having sort of multi-sided market structures in a platform environment, so that we're not providing just spatial information as a part of a total solution. We've got everybody who needs to be part of a total solution there, and we're able to embed the Earth observation in a total decision support system for within informatics or health or whatever the sector is. we're getting out of this standalone Earth observation idea and into lots of data, lots of analysis, all integrated together to provide a much more comprehensive solution that people are more willing to buy. And it's similar to things that they're buying already, so it's easier. It's easier to have that adoption as well. So the Earth observation is not so visible, but it's is part of a much larger market segment. So hopefully everybody makes more money that way. So that's the type of capability we're trying to push on the sort of market uptake. Also, how can we have a global data collection capability? How can we use the ESA reach to support small companies in Europe to enter into export markets? And lastly, if we're not funding new innovative capabilities using the data in different ways, then we're going to stagnate and we're just going to have the same old stuff, and we're going to get more and more competition from lower cost competitors with the same level of technical expertise as we have in Europe. So we're over the last few years, we've been trying to stimulate a number of new developments as well. So things like new SAR processing capabilities like inverse SAR. We're just about to release a tender again on inverse SAR, on micro Doppler signatures, etc. Other AI, you mentioned AI-based methods are, how do we move out of what's essentially still quite involved in the R&D side of things. We're really trying to make AI-based methodologies much more accepted, routine. That involves all sorts of technical developments from our side, from ensuring training data are available, traceable, etc., up to the methodology is traceable as well. So how do we make these things industrial standards rather than interesting R&D activities? So that's the range of technical developments we're trying to we've been trying to address over the recent years, and I think we'll be expanding on these. The plan is we expand on these over the next 3 or 4 years as well. So it's really on the uptake, it's take Earth observation and embed it into user working practices with everybody else that needs to be involved, not Earth observation by itself, I think is the main fil rouge, if you like, for what we're doing on the immediate market expansion there.
Well, that was a avalanche of information, Gordon. Thank you very much for that. And
sorry,
follow up a couple of those points directly with you now. We have a bit of time for this, so because really, I mean, we could spend quite a long time unpicking what you just told us. I'd like to just highlight a couple of things and ask you to elaborate a bit further, maybe on that. So, first of all, very interesting to hear about this shift towards a platform-based model. And to hear your comment that a lot of your services are still on a kind of a 90s model. I mean, I guess we can see that. But this idea that you build a sort of total decision support system within which you've got all the information you need. EO is one of those things, and a user, an operational, non-EO person from, as you put it, informatics or health or whatever, can go in there and get the information that they need. And of course, the issue here is that we've stopped selling space data and we're now selling information. And the fact is, when you sell information, you have to know exactly what kind of information your counterpart's going to need. It's not like IT, which is cross-cutting in the sense that you can put a network cable in any building. It doesn't matter which sector that building is. It's still going to be, bits are going to be flying up and down along that cable. And it doesn't make a difference to the IT provider. Whereas the information, it makes a difference. So I want to ask you to elaborate on this idea of these platform-based decision support systems. Could you give us an example of one that's operational? Could you show us, what is in store for that? How do we go about getting involved in building these platforms?
Okay, that's a fair point. I'm not talking about a single platform for one particular application or whatever. I mean, I think we're using the word sort of platform ecosystem as a way of, it's a sort of shorthand way of saying, look, how do we get the Earth observation and the IoT sensor network data and the mobile data and the social media information, and whatever else you need. How do we make all these things interoperable, accessible, usable, and traceable, so that somewhere somebody will have the idea of how they integrate these things in? Now, it may come from the Earth observation guys themselves. It may come from somebody else. This is Earth observation that's available in this ARD or whatever format is. I'm able to play with it, integrate it with this other data, and generate the information product. What we need to ensure using this ecosystem is that everything is traceable, so that people get paid, IPR is protected, and things can be independently verified for that. So we're not talking about a single black box platform at this point in time. We're really trying to push a way of lots of small companies doing business. I mean, just complement what was being said in the previous session as well. I remember there was we had a meeting at HELCOM, the Environment Secretariat for the Baltic Sea. This must be about 8 or 9 years ago, and they said, Earth observation, yeah. We were going to use Earth observation, and then we had to look at it. I went to go to this FTP site, and all the file names were really long, and they were all really big, and they took ages to download, and then we had to get this expensive software to visualize the data sets. Then we realized we'd downloaded the wrong data, and it was all just too complicated. So, please fix that. And that's again an extreme example, but we're trying to get out of that and say, people don't come to Earth observation. We need to take all the difficulty and the complication and whatever away from this, and make it easy for people to use and combine and whatever. It's not us defining the market at that point. The market will be defining what we do and how we make things easy.
That's great, thanks, and that clarifies the point, and I think it's a very interesting perspective, and I think it is definitely a way out of this EO by itself sort of view. Would you just comment briefly on how you see the maturity of the artificial intelligence components? Could you put a TRL on the AI sort of capability? Is that going too far?
Well, I mean, it depends on what sort of pattern recognition. It's all very good when it's trained on a particular thing, and then you do something slightly different, and it's rubbish. So I think it's. I don't think a sort of TRL in the philosophy of how TRLs are supposed to be used is applicable at where we are at present. I think we need to admit that. We get a lot of proposals. Sorry, I don't want to hog the meeting here, but we get a lot of proposals. Particularly from people that aren't used to working with these, and it's if there's an AI component in there, it's like magic happens. It's not treated with the same sort of technical thoroughness as any other sort of algorithm. So we need to really put it on a much more thorough, robust basis inside the industry. Over the next few years. I mean, there are a number of EARSC guys well advanced in doing particular clustering, etc., as part of the analysis they're providing. We need to do more of that and get it into that robust, routine way of working.
Thank you, Gordon. And of course, you're not hogging anything. It was a follow-up question, and we had time. We're now back on track. But we spoke about TRL, and at this point, I would like to go to the responses to the question that we asked our audience, which was, in 4 words or less, how should the EO market be developed? So if I could have that on the screen, please. And one of the questions that I received in the Q&A is relevant to the TRL issue. So I'm going to ask that one now to Stella, which is, should the EIC move beyond TRL and capture market readiness too?
I think it should continue in both ways, as we are continuing with TRL, but don't forget that when we are talking about the EIC accelerator, it's very much also about the market readiness, the potential commercial customers, and that's why I was saying we do have a lot of Earth observation projects in the EIC accelerator with TRL 6 or TRL 7. It is actually, the accelerator is built around the commercial ecosystem, having enough customers, having a solution, and having companies which might become unicorn companies and develop fully commercial products and services. But we can talk about commercialization and full commercial services only if we have a good TRL product or services. And that's why we have the Pathfinder transition before that to help and support companies. So
you're saying it is in fact built into this pathfinding process. Market readiness comes kind of as part of the package of technology readiness.
What I'm saying is that in Pathfinder and transition, we have TRL 1, TRL 4, TRL 4, TRL 6. But when we reach to accelerator, then the focus is much more on the market development, on the commercial, on the market niche, on how for the projects which are assessed. But if there are companies which have a lower TRL level, they could apply to Pathfinder. So in our program, Pathfinder and Accelerator are the open programs. So what I'm saying is that market focus and growing a company in the market is one of the major areas considered in the Accelerator. But TRL, you cannot grow a market and enter it if you don't have a good TRL level.
Absolutely. Thank you for the clarification. All right, so we have a number of questions. We're going to move to those in just a second. But first, I'd like us to review some of the responses to our poll. So if I could have the poll on the screen. So how should the market be further developed? Long-term procurement commitments. Long-term procurement commitment, I think that would be one for EUSPA and ESA to think about, maybe?
Maybe I can comment on this one, because we're also supporting the Commission to implement Cassini, and Cassini has different phases, and similarly to what EIC is doing, and related to what I mentioned before, it has to be solutions that are market oriented, that are going to be sustainable, and that can provide some benefits and revenues. And in order to support that, you need to go the full cycle. You can support the ideas, you can support, let's say, first R&D, you can support the implementation of prototypes, then you can support the implementation or the growth of that prototype into a product. But then you also have to try to support the market into growing and creating a product and a solution that is sustainable. So help them to go there to the market. So their long-term procurement, it's a way to support that. Of course, what we, at least at EUSPA, what we will try to do in the context of Cassini is to do this full cycle, in which we are going to also put in contact different ways of funding with venture capitalists, with startups, with entrepreneurs, creating space-based solutions, because it's a transversal initiative. It's for GNSS, but also for Earth observation, in which we can help them to put them in contact with this funding means, and also help them to grow. So for us, it's a different means to achieve sustainability and be in the market. But that part of understanding the market, having a business model, really analyzing all the possible options with revenues and so on. This is what makes a business viable, and this is what has to be long term. For us, it's not really a procurement, but a support that has to be long term.
Thank you for that, and I think that the comment actually reflects what we might call the legacy style of doing things, which would be anchor tendency and so on. And now I think we're moving into much more market-focused discussion, certainly on certain sectors. So thank you, Eduardo, for that. Just a brief scan over some of these other comments. I won't get to comment on all of them, but I do wish to make special note of verticalization ×4. Yes, no prizes for guessing who submitted that one. Well, there are prizes, actually. I don't know who it was. Stop calling it EO market. I think this very much reflects some of the points from Gordon. Of course, Mr. Verticalization also wins there. We are not selling EO. We are selling into insurance, into health, into disaster management or urban or infrastructure, and we need to speak in those terms. So I think that's a real lesson there. If we take that one seriously, it means quite a fundamental change to how certainly how we brand ourselves and market ourselves. Okay, we spoke about procurement. We speak about convincing customers to pay. We speak about going global beyond Europe, and Gordon mentioned the export development. I wrote carefully, so I could see the results, so that's not relevant. Demonstrating social and/or environmental sensitivity. I mean, this is key because we have seen a lot more interest in climate-related services all around environmental and social governance. Anyone wish to comment on that? Gordon, by raising hand, you could indicate if you want to comment on ESG as in developing the market.
Yeah, I think ESG and I mean a lot of going beyond just ESG to I think under policies such as the Green Deal. I mean, we're the idea of introducing regulation to create markets is always a bit uncomfortable. But in the case of some of the Green Deal priorities, where there's a lot of industrial commercial activities where the externalities are not properly reflected in the price, then having Green Deal policies that put that in place, that needs to be done cost effectively. So whether that's through ESG and share price, etc., whether that's through policy implementation, that it's significant. It's there's a realization that something must be done over the next few years, and I think it's a massive opportunity for. But again, it's not. Earth observation is not the total solution there. It needs to be integrated with all sorts of other data, and people are going to be trying to do things as cheaply as possible with with their own internal data, etc. So, there's an opportunity, but we need to be going in sensibly with our eyes open and see, what's the best solution for the customers there.
I wanted to comment on the previous one on the long-term procurement, and I wanted just to add that in our programs, for example, in lower tier levels like Pathfinder, the projects are 3 to 4 years with 3 to 4 million. So which gives a long-term predictability. That's the minimum. It's not just like 1 year or 2 years. So I think this is extremely important, especially to give this predictability to lower tier projects which are really doing innovation to reach proof of concept.
That's very interesting. It's not at all the case of the anchor tendency type thinking. It's the opposite of that. It's how you get to becoming onto the market with a service which has now demonstrated itself to be, innovative in some significant sense. Thank you for adding that clarification. All right, let's have a quick look at some more of these responses because we can, I think, cluster them in some sense. So we've got stop calling it the EO market. Again, thank you for clarifying that we should call it by its sectoral name. By recruiting more salespeople than engineers and PhDs. I'm not sure it's necessary that there are more salespeople than engineers. I suppose it depends on the size of your business and how good your salespeople are, but definitely a point to be taken on board. Help demand to lead the way. I think this speaks to a lot of the things we've heard throughout the day, in fact. And focus on commercialization support, like the program of Stella and the EUSPA activities, as well as some of the other things, and anchor customers, and incorporate the social aspects. Now, I just have a couple of questions left, and we've only got a couple of minutes left, in fact. So I think there are a couple of questions on here, which one could say we'd sort of touched on them, and we already asked a few from this list. So I'm going to leave those there, and I'm going to ask my co-panelists to just give one closing statement each before we draw the session to a close. So Gordon, I'll turn to you first.
Oh, right. So very quickly, just on the, I just wanted to make a quick point on the anchor tendency. That depends on the risk. I think when we're in a situation where industry can take the technical risk, then whoever's the customer is in a position to be at the anchor tenant, and I think that's an interesting way forward. For example, for Copernicus, but for some of the higher risk stuff that we do, it's not going to solve the problems. In terms of closing, I think, there's a lot of technologies coming together now. And you mentioned some of them, platforms, AI, enabling a lot of different ways of doing business. I think over the next 3 or 4 years, we can really start to change how we are doing business and enable the opening up of the market. Not 100% driven by the special Earth observation people. It can be done, by people taking Earth observation themselves. And my last point is, although I made the comment we're in the 1990s architecture, that wasn't a criticism. If people are making money that way, then that's fine. It's just you don't need ESA help for that. Well done. Keep doing it if you're making money, and our good wishes go to you as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. And I also appreciated very much your, very tangible story of the download of, these very heavy FTP files. I think that also tells a good story. Eduardo?
Yes, so basically repeating what I said, I think now it's a time to really create products. For that, you need to understand the market. You need to know who is the user and acknowledge that users are not Earth observation experts. So you have to understand what they need. That sometimes it's absolutely not in Earth observation terms, but you will realize that Earth observation can solve those needs. But first, you need to do that exercise to understand what are their needs. That you cannot really go to a farmer and talk about you need soil moisture, because what they will only know is that I want to save money, I want to not use so much water. And then is when you will realize that you can monitor soil moisture and then you can be more efficient. So it's starting from the user perspective. And then you will be able to see what are the barriers, what are the needs, what can Earth observation do, can cover those gaps, and you can design your product tailored to those needs, and you will be able to build a kind of value proposition for your product that will solve their needs. You have to talk their language and tell them how will they save costs, or will they earn more money, be more efficient, or even if they are forced to fulfill regulations, how will be able to do it with your solution. So these are the terms in which these solutions have to be built and presented to the user. Otherwise, they will not see the benefits. They have to see the benefits in their own words.
Thanks, Eduardo, for that concise summary. Stella.
Well, picking up on Eduardo's words, I would say that we really need to encourage the development of customer-driven, interoperable, scalable, and affordable products and services, space-based. But I think it's also very important not to forget that SMEs and startups need to design, develop, and sell and scale up on disruptive innovations. But in parallel, they need to get the customers. They need to attract the funding, and these are challenges which are quite complex. Therefore, we need to support them from an institutional point of view and really support them from the first day of innovation through commercialization and demonstration the best way we can. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that summary. And I think given the time, I'm ready to close this session as well, and to give a big thank you once again to my co-panelists, Eduardo, Stella, and Gordon online. Thank you very much.
No, we'll stay. I need some company. I feel lonely.
Okay.
So, good afternoon. I have this difficult task to close this successful event after a long day and many interesting discussions. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Natassa. I'm the project coordinator of FIRE. And you have all received many emails from me along these last months and weeks. So apologies for spamming you, but it was necessary. So this event represents the culmination, as a friend of mine told me yesterday, of the outreach to the EU community in the context of building a strategic roadmap for the future of Earth observation in Europe. So the goal of FIRE was and is to build a community and to define a process that captures the now and shapes the tomorrow of the European Earth observation sector. As a project coordinator, I'm very happy and proud to confirm that we have accomplished it. How we have done this? First of all, along these 2 years, we had 2 focus group discussions where we worked closely with 7 sector leads and gathered the needs of 145 industry experts from 18 countries. Then we had the 2 FIRE Forum. In the first one, a year ago, we discussed the challenges of the 6, and I will repeat again, the 6 FIRE communities is agriculture, marine, wind energy, infrastructure, raw materials, and urban development. So all this discussion from the focus group has been presented in the FIRE Forum. Then, this year, today, we follow a similar approach. So we had at the beginning of the day our 7 EU evangelists presenting the results of the second focus group discussions. But then we changed a bit the focus. The whole discussion today was more like cross-cutting. We have been discussing with some of the leading lights in the sector, the latest R&D trends. Then it was the incorporation of EU in the different stage of policy making. We discussed about the evolution of the underlying infrastructure for the exploration of Earth observation. Then it was all about how to develop the necessary capacity among different stakeholders. And the last 2 panels, the modern ways to raise awareness on key topics with the help of Earth observation. And last but not least, this panel now, the development of the market. The third thing we've done along these 2 years is a novelty of the project, and this is the FIRE EU Evangelist program. Our 7 FIRE influencers have already presented in 12 events, while their mandate was to present only in 12. But you can see that they're all eager to do what they're doing, to use their EU Evangelist hat and take the extra mile. And I'm sure that they will present in more events by the end of the project and even more afterwards. So thank you so much. And I see Lucy doing this. Thank you, Lucy. And the ultimate output, the 4th thing that we have been doing of the output of this project is the roadmap of the research and all this discussion. So the 2 focus group discussion, the previous FIRE Forum, and what we are doing together today will feed the roadmap that Lefteris mentioned this morning. So this report, this document is very important, it's very crucial for us, and we are going to publish it and share with you by the end of the year, and I'm sure that we are going to organize an event to promote it. So stay tuned for this. And for today, I can officially close the FIRE Forum 2022, so a big applause. And if there is one message that you should bring home with you from the today's discussion, is what our Marine EU evangelist Juan Peña said this morning. We should all work closer together to our users and make Earth observation easy as the weather forecast. So for me, this is very important. So if we all do that, we have accomplished something. And now it's the thank you part. So I will start thanking, first of all of you for joining us physically today. It has been a great pleasure finally to shake hands and hug many of you, but also to the ones who couldn't come today, and they join us remotely and they stay online for so many hours. I would also like to thank our 37 speakers and moderators, particularly our moderators, for spicing up the discussion along the day, but also our 7 EU evangelists and our sector leads, our 7 sector leads. Together we have really, approached so many different the 6 communities, but to so many different people. And I would like to thank the European Commission for funding this project, because without their funding, we couldn't have been here today. And obviously, this event shouldn't have been that successful without the dream team, as I call it, of the FIRE/EXPANDEO. So the team has been working days, but mainly nights. And I would like to thank and give a big applause to Veronica, to Paulina and Ruta, but of course the rest of the team for all the great work you have done. And I would like to ask all the FIRE team members to stand up so people can see who is behind the FIRE project. Please, don't be shy, do it. Come on. So, I would like to wish you all good afternoon, and once again, thank you for working together with us in shaping the future of Earth observation. And we have left this in your seat, or you found it. So, don't forget, Earth observation helps key industries grow towards a more sustainable, efficient, and innovative future. So well done to all of you for doing that. Thank you.